Yeah, everybody enjoyed the election? Yeah? What do you guys think about that?
Good.
It was good?
Yeah.
Good Trump one?
Yeah.
All right.
What do you think?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle. You know, we'll do a few elections, so we'll see what happens. All right. Anybody else? Any other opinions? It's kind of neutral, like, we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah. Do my thing.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
All right. He got elected, he won. We'll see what he does with it.
Surprised he got the popular vote. He didn't even get that in 2016.
No, no, he won the popular vote too, which is,
About
interesting. No, it just gives you that mindset that, hey, America's thoughts and, are more in line with, Mr. Trump. So we'll see what happens, all right? So nobody leaves just yet, okay? Don't leave the country. Okay, not yet, not till you finish school anyway. If you're done with school, you can leave the country if you want, but it'll be fine, fine. Okay, any other questions aside from, anything, class, work, life, anything? No? So far, so good?
Life is so hard.
Life is hard, huh? Oh, wait till you get my age, it gets harder, okay? All right, you're here, you're healthy, you're okay, all right? Everybody get a chance to read the comments on the feedback that I gave on your work, okay? For the most part, everybody did great. Again, it's just those little things, the citations, references, those little, details, right? Pay attention to that, but all in all, everybody did pretty good, okay? On their engagements. So this week or last week, I didn't really take any points off, as long as you followed the prompt and you were engaging, good to go. This week, I'm gonna ratchet up a little bit, okay, slowly. So I'll be looking for more citing, focusing on structure and format a little bit more. All right, I'm not gonna kill you on points. I'm never gonna kill you on points, as far as the citations and stuff. But I'll take some points off. But it's not gonna be anything to fail you or anything like that. It'll be 2 points at most for the most part. I take off for citing. Okay. All right. Aside from that. Not really much else going on. It's pretty quiet. Veterans Day is Monday, no school Monday. So if you have class on Monday, no class Monday. Okay, it's a holiday, Veterans Day. Okay, so don't come to class. Well, no one will be here. All right, if you have school, if you have class on Mondays. That's about it. Nothing else interesting? Did anything interesting this weekend? Did anybody go anywhere this weekend? Nobody went anywhere.
Yeah, I went to beach.
What beach? Which one?
La Jolla and beach.
La Jolla Beach. Okay. Did you like it?
Yeah.
First time?
No.
Okay. All right. So you were there, You've been there a gazillion times. Nobody else did anything exciting? Leave town, go somewhere, anywhere? Nowhere? You guys gotta get out more, okay? Go see stuff.
No time.
No time? What do you mean no time? Oh, you're busy doing LE. Oh, I know. Yeah. Whatever, man. Ain't really doing no LEs. That is easy. I'm working, Dr. K. I'm too busy. I'm working. No, go out and see San Diego, go to Vegas, go to, I don't know, Palm Springs. There's a lot to see. Okay? Go out and do something. The books will be okay. All right? Don't worry. Be fine. All right. So nothing going on. We're gonna jump into this week's schedule. All right. So today we're gonna talk about EEO, equal employment opportunity. As soon as my PowerPoint goes. All right. So one of the things about employment, specifically in the U.S., God bless you, is that it's premised on the fact that everyone has a fair and equal chance at working. All right. If you want to work, if you want a job, right, you can have a job, right? But the point is that you have a fair opportunity as compared to everyone else to work, right? And so what we try to avoid is any discrimination or any, someone being unemployed because of their race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, right? What we call the protected classes, okay? There's 7 or 8 of them, give or take, that apply to labor. And under those conditions, you can't discriminate against someone because they're Muslim, right? You can't discriminate against someone because they're a woman, right? Or that they like Trump, right? Political affiliation, okay? I can't be mad at you like, oh yeah, I like that, Trump won president. Go, okay. Hey, that's not right. Okay, it's illegal, right? Just like you go get a job, you can't do that. So everybody has a fair opportunity based on the merits, right? What do you bring to the table? All right. It's not about what you look like, what color your hair is, what kind of clothes you wear. Doesn't matter, right? Can you do the work? Right? At the end of the day, is what really should be focusing on. But unfortunately for us, that's not how the world really works. Okay. People's biases kind of seep into the workforce, right? Even if it's an unconscious bias, right? Even if it's something that you don't realize you're doing, right? You could be unconsciously biased against someone or something, right? And that may come out in your decisions where you're like, man, you hear someone say, I'm not a racist, I love everybody, right? Kind of sort of, but for the most part, it's true. But you may have something that you've been through that may be something that's latent or inside that doesn't really come out in a way where you consciously think about it. It just comes out in ways that you may do something where someone would say, "Oh, you grew up in a house with a maid, or you grew up in a house with a servant, right?" Let's just say you go to someone's house, right? And maybe at your house, you eat dinner, you take the dishes, and you wash the dishes yourself, right? You go to your friend's house, they eat dinner, and they walk away from the table. Okay? It's just what they're used to. All right. No, nothing that they're doing wrong per se, but that's what they're used to. Right. And so for you, that might not register the same way as it registers for them, right? They're doing something unconsciously because over time that's just what they know, right? It's nothing for them to think about. All right. So it's the same thing in the workplace. Sometimes people come in for interviews or seeking employment, and you may unconsciously be biased against them, right? You may hold something against them that you really don't think you're holding against them, right? And so we try to avoid that by having what we call Title VII, right? And under Title VII, we have the protected classes, all right? Like I talked about, sexual orientation, gender, religion, some of the other ones we're going to talk about today. In addition to that, there's a bunch of other laws, right, that we use in order to regulate the workplace. Okay, we want to make sure that everybody gets a fair shot at the job that they deserve to have based on their merits. Right. So we may have someone who has a disability, for instance, right? Someone in a wheelchair. Does that mean that they can't work? Right. One of the most intelligent people on the planet, in the world, right? At one point, everybody familiar with Stephen Hawking's, right? Anybody familiar with Stephen Hawking's? Stephen Hawkins was a brilliant man, right? Yeah. You guys have seen the movie. You guys seen his what is it called? It's it's an older movie, but it was a story about his life, right? And how he ended up in a wheelchair. He was one of the most brilliant people in the world, but he was in a wheelchair, and then at some point he had a tube that he couldn't talk, and he would just blow the tube, and the computer would talk for him, right? But brilliant man, right? Imagine someone comes in like that. Are you going to discriminate against them, right? Not give them the job because they're in a wheelchair, right? Organizations have to, to some degree, what we call reasonable accommodation, right? If there's someone with a wheelchair, or if there's a building, you ever think about why there's an elevator in this building? Why? Why is there an elevator in this building? Yeah, common sense, just tell me.
In case someone can go up the stairs.
In case someone can't go up the stairs, right? Or it's convenience. For us that can go up the stairs, it's a convenience, right? But for those that can't go up the stairs, right, it's a necessity. Okay? And so when you have someone like that and you want them to work in your place, your organization, you have to accommodate them, okay? And it's called reasonable accommodation, right? And so all these things come into play when you're trying to hire someone through the recruiting process, because we want to make sure that people's disabilities don't, prohibit them from working, right? And anything can be a disability. If you have bad headaches, that could be a disability. If you have blurry vision or something the doctor said wrong with your eyes, that could be considered disability. Back pain, disability, right? Things like that, right? You don't want to be, it's for women, especially, you want to come in and because you're pregnant, you don't get hired, right? Which happened a lot basically up until probably the 80s, probably into the 90s, right? Companies did not want to hire women that were pregnant or planning to have kids. right? Because they felt that it would take away from the organization, right? If I have to give you, I don't know, 8 weeks, 9 weeks to leave the company, right, to go take care of your baby, who's gonna do your job, right? Who am I gonna, I got to hire someone else, right? So they wouldn't hire women that were pregnant or were planning on having kids. So you see this whole generation of women that had to decide between their career and their having a family. Okay, and you see them kind of manifesting now when you see someone like we'll just use Vice President Harris, right? She doesn't have any kids, right? But that's a decision she made a long time ago to pursue her career because at that point when she was coming up, you had to make that choice. You couldn't do both. Nowadays, it's different. Women can do both, right? We, as a society, have opened up to the fact that look, you don't want to discriminate against a woman because she wants to have a family, right? There has to be some balance. You have to be able to have a family, have a good job, have a career, be passionate about your job and enthusiastic about what you do, but also have a husband and kids, right? You can have it all, right? And so that wasn't necessarily the mindset before. So we had to put laws in place to protect women against that, all right? We had to put laws in place to protect minorities against discrimination. Oh, well, you're black. We don't hire black people, okay? Or you're Indian, we don't hire Indian people. Or you're Brazilian, we don't hire any Brazilian or Chinese or whatever it is, right? We don't hire you because you're not American or you're not white or whatever the case may be, right? Got to put laws in for that, right? Because you don't want to be prejudiced or discriminate against people because of that particular characteristic that they have no control over. Did anybody choose to be Chinese or Indian or black or a woman? No, none of us chose, right? We just kind of came out and here we are, right? We got what we got and we have to work with it, right? But that doesn't make you any less than anybody else, right? It just means you're just another person, different, and looking for an opportunity, right? So what have you done? You know, did you go to school? What kind of degree do you have? What experience do you bring to the table? What's your personality like, right? Do you fit within the organizational culture, right? Those are the questions you need to be asking, not whether you're a woman or you're gonna have kids. Do you have a boyfriend? All right. These are questions that they used to ask in interviews. Do you plan on getting married? Do you want a family? Do you have a boyfriend? What does your boyfriend do? Can you stay at home and not work? All right? Because they want to know, well, the mindset is that women belong at home raising kids and men belong in the workplace, right? That was the old mindset. That's not how it goes anymore, right? Specifically because we have these laws to make sure we protect people, right? Make sure we protect people against is Diwali still going on? Diwali?
No,
Diwali's over?
yeah, it's over.
How long does Diwali last? 3 days, okay. Right? So you don't want to discriminate against those things, right? Before, probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, you know, you could say Diwali, nobody would even know what that means.
Yeah.
Okay? Not at all. They understood Ramadan, right? They understood Passover, but they didn't understand Diwali, right? And so over time, education, different laws, hey, it doesn't matter what the religion is, what the celebration is, it is important to that person in that culture. So we need to respect that as Americans and as America, what we represent as a melting pot, right? So we don't want to, you know, discriminate against people because of their religion, right? That's okay if they want to celebrate. You know, that's their culture. So we should afford that opportunity. Certain companies depending on, you know, of course, where you're at. I'm gonna use Toyota because Toyota was great, okay? Toyota, we had an actual prayer room at Toyota for, you know, for those that were practicing Muslims and, you know, Islam and that kind of thing, you know, they had to pray and they bring their, well, you know, that thing, that prayer mat, and they can go pray, you know, as many times as they need to, you know, to do it while they're at work. They could do handle their business. No one said anything. It was just normal to see that, okay? In all the religions, right? If there was a holiday, it was religious, go, no problem, okay? I'll see you in a week, right? Or Ramadan when you're fasting, right? Hey, you can go leave early because I know you're tired, you haven't eaten, and you won't eat till tonight, right? Just take it easy, right? And understanding that that is important for organizational success right? Because you want the people to feel valued. You want people to understand, like, hey, you understand, Chinese New Year. You understand, those different, all the cultural aspects of what we have within our demographic in the United States, all right? And so EEO specifically is geared towards that, making sure that we don't discriminate against people, right? And so these are just a couple of the characteristics, right? Race, age, sex, disability, religion. There's a lot more of them, but the ones we focus on primarily are those. Okay. Let me go back here. All right. So in every so let's start at the top. At the government level, right, we have what we call the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, right, the EEOC. Okay. And this body basically makes sure that companies within the United States follow the law. Okay. They make sure that, hey, if you have a problem as a, as an employee, you have a process in which you can submit your grievance and we will handle it. All right. And that's at the highest levels. And it falls under the Department of Labor. Right. It's independent, but it still belongs to the Department of Labor. Right. And the Department of Labor, they control all the labor in the United States. Okay. Make sure whatever laws, rules, governing bodies, all this stuff. Okay. And so at the top is the EEOC. Every city, right? Every state has a major EEOC at the capital, and every city typically has an EEOC office. Okay. And then typically within the organization, the HR department has an EEOC rep. All right. And so the way it works is that if there's a grievance, the employee will go to HR and say, hey, I want to file a grievance, right? And say, no problem. Okay. I got a problem with manager XYZ or coworker ABC, and I need to resolve it. If the company can't resolve it, right? HR can't resolve it, or the managers can't resolve it, the employees can't figure it out, and there's still a problem, the employee has the right to submit a grievance to the EEOC, right? And then once it goes to the EEOC, it's kind of out of the organization's hand, right? You submit it, the EEOC comes in, and they do an investigation, right? And then so EEOC goes, okay, give me the facts. Let me talk to everybody I need to talk to, right? And then they compile a report. And whatever that report says, that's what goes. Okay? So that way, they're the third party, kind of neutral, just looking at the facts and making sure that, hey, everything was done right or what was done wrong, right? And the remedies, right? The thing that you can get basically as the employee who's submitting the grievance is that whatever you were supposed to get or you thought you were supposed to get, right? You will get, right? You don't get any money. Okay. So let's just say, for instance, you thought you should have got promoted, but somebody else got promoted because they're friends with the boss, right? And you're like, well, no, that's not right, all right? And you submit your grievance. If the grievance goes in your favor, then you'll get promoted, and you'll get all the money that comes with that you were supposed to get anyway. Okay. So the EOC process is really there to make sure that everybody gets fair treatment, and that anything that's done that's not really above board, right? We rectify that, okay? And we kind of, not kind of, we try to fix the problem, okay? If it's a manager, if it's organizational culture, depending what it is, we try to fix it, right? And the more complex the issue is, the higher it goes up. Okay, so it'll start at the local level, which really is at the organizational level. And if it can't get resolved there, it'll go to the city level. If it can't get fixed there, it'll go to the state level. If it can't get fixed there, it goes to the federal level. Okay, so at each step, it gets incrementally more pressing, right? And so if it gets to the federal level, then you have what we call a precedent, sort of, right? Because at the federal level, we're doing policy. We're not doing, necessary separate deliberate actions. We are creating strategy, right? So if it gets up to this level, right, let's just say it gets to the Supreme Court, for instance, right, because that's where it would be adjudicated. It goes to the Supreme Court. Anything the Supreme Court decides on becomes a precedence because they're the highest court in the land, right? So they decide on something like, let's just say abortion, for instance, right? Abortion was legal for a long time. And then they decided we don't want it to be legal anymore. We're gonna let the states decide, right? So Supreme Court decided, and boom, the right to abortion is gone, and now it depends on the states. Okay, see how that works? That's a precedence, right? We could not, now we can decide the state level, right? But we couldn't do that before, okay? And so the same with EOC. They kind of try to figure everything out at the lowest level. And if we can't figure out the lowest level, it gets bumped up, bumped up, bumped up, bumped up, and it will get resolved at some point. And if it goes to the highest level, then it becomes what we call a precedence. That means that now anyone can use your case as an example to support their case. It's kind of like a reference or citation, right? Case, XYZ happened in California, and it went up to the Supreme Court or the EOC, the federal level, and this is what the outcome was. That sounds like something I'm going through right now. I'm going to use this case as a reference for my case to support my point, right? And so this happens in law, right? This is legal 101. Come on in. No worries. This is legal 101, okay? That's how the law works for the most part. Lawyers go in, they look at your case, and then they go to the references, they'll go to the books and say, what cases have there been that look like this? Okay, that have gone in my direction and gone the direction I wanted to go in, right? Or if they didn't go in the direction I wanted to go in, what cases look like this? So I can use it as a reference and say, in 1869, this same thing happened, all right? And this is what they said in 1869. This same thing is happening again in 2024, and we're saying the same thing. So in 1869, it turned out this way. We expect it to turn out the same way in 2024, right? So we're creating a pattern, right? So that we have like something codified and we know what's going to happen in those particular situations. Kind of like a model, sort of, right? We know, hey, now abortions are not legal, right? Federally, it's on the states. You know what you need to do if you want to have an abortion. You got to deal with it on the state level, okay? Whatever rules they're going to come up with or they come up with, right? You got to adhere to those rules. But it's on the federal level. Now the states have the mandate to kind of figure it out, right? And so they will do that, right? But there's a history, right? There's a pattern, there's a model for us to follow in which of us make decisions. So we don't waste time in trying to decide, oh, is this abortion different than this abortion? No, they're all abortions, okay? At the end of the day, after we get a certain amount of precedence going, all right? All right, so again, federal level is the highest level. We got the state and city governments, right? And then we have the courts, right? Interpret the law and rule on cases. We got the judges, lawyers and that kind of thing that deal here, that deal with city cases, right? We have the city attorney, a district attorney, I have to say, all right? Under the district attorney, they have a bunch of deputy DAs, right? Anybody ever watch Law and Order? No, somewhat, little bit.
I watch Suits.
Huh?
I watched two Suits.
Suits?
Yeah.
I never watched Suits. I don't know what they do with
Good
Suits.
show.
Suits is they're a legal firm. They're a little different from how the city works. All right, but close enough, right? So the city, they have district attorney, and the DA decides what cases go, when they go, how they go. Okay, if you murder someone in the city of San Diego, the case goes to the DA. Okay, and the DA decides, okay, what are the merits of the case? Well, the person was walking down the street and somebody jumped him, and the person that jumped him, unfortunately, the other person, they jumped the wrong person and they got beat and they died. So self-defense, is that what you're telling me? Yeah, self-defense. Okay, and we're not gonna take that one to trial. Dismiss that one, send that person home, self-defense, nothing here to see, right? Or if it's something where, oh, you murdered someone, but there's some different circumstance, you were trying to rob them or try to do something to them, like, okay, now we got something. We're going to refer that up. We're going to put an indictment in. We're going to go take it to what we call a grand jury. All right. And so the grand jury is where they really look at the evidence and figure out, is there a case here? And then it goes to what we call the petite jury. Okay. That's when you see the case. That's when you actually see them in court, where with the, 12 jury members, that's called a petite jury. That's what it's really called. The grand jury is something that's popular, but doesn't mean anything except for fact finding, right? Petite jury is the actual case and what we're doing in trying to adjudicate this particular legal aspect, whatever the case may be, right? So all these particular institutions all serve a purpose to making sure that the rules are followed, right? So let's just say Qualcomm, if they do something wrong, right, and the EOC steps in, it's going to be the local EOC. Right, and then from there, if they still can't fix it, then it goes up to the next level, which would be the state. Well, the city, yeah, the city, then the state. And then if that can be fixed, then they'll go to the federal level. Okay? So they all work together, right? And as the further you go up, the longer the process, the slower it is. Okay? If you have to go to federal court, unless it's something pressing, and when I mean pressing, I mean like, like yesterday we had the election and they need to count the votes, and somebody says something's wrong with the votes, that's pressing. Okay, we'll take a look at that right now. The Supreme Court's justices are looking at it right now. But if it just say somebody, at work kicked my desk and I didn't like it and they keep bullying me at work, that's not gonna go anywhere. It's gonna take a few years to kind of, work its way up. If you have a case that needs to go up, right? Usually, all right, good companies, the problems get solved at the lowest level. Okay, that's how you can tell really kind of leaders you have. Any problem you have can really be solved at the lowest levels. What's really the key, you think, to solving issues, solving grievances, solving conflicts?
Understanding the situation.
Understand the situation,
Getting to an agreement.
getting to an agreement, communication. Okay, all those things fall into communication. If you don't have communication or good communication, as I say, you're not gonna get anywhere. Okay, that is the first step in fixing the problem. Good communication fixes everything. Okay, because if you really sit back and look at things, you notice everything is really about miscommunication, right? You said this, well, I thought you said this, or I thought you meant that, right? This is why texts are confusing sometimes. All right. My ex-girlfriend, she sent me a text, like, why you yelling at me? Or what's wrong? Why you mad? How can I tell that she's mad through a text? I know what she writes, right? I know how she writes, I know what she says, and she just sends me a text. I'm like, uh-oh, got problems. All right, I might be in trouble here. What's the problem, right? So communication is something that's key to resolving issues, all right? And so you have good communication, things get pretty much resolved at the bottom, okay? And that's what you want. You don't want to spend a bunch of money trying to fix issues at the city, state level, at the federal level. All that stuff is expensive, right? Anybody ever try to hire a lawyer for something? Anything? Yeah, lawyers are expensive, all right? If you get a DUI or something crazy, even that's gonna cost you $7,000. Okay, $8,000 for DUI, all right? Knock on wood, nobody's having DUI here, thank goodness. Okay, we don't want no problems. Don't go find out. Don't need a lawyer. Okay, don't do nothing crazy. All right. So it's important that you understand how this all works and that their point or their job, really, their focus is to make sure that the rules are followed, and we're going to enforce that. Okay, we're going to enforce the rules. Okay. Okay. So let's start with the first type of discrimination, right? Disparate treatment. Okay. When we talk about disparate treatment, this is a situation in which I personally discriminate against someone, just one person. Okay. I pick on you because of whatever reason, right? One of the protected classes. It can't just be anything. It has to be under the protected classes, right? If I pick on you because of your hat, right, and the logo or something like that, that doesn't count. If I pick on you because, you're from wherever country, we got a problem, right? And I kids keep doing it, okay? And I discriminate against you because of it, right? Oh, there's a good job opportunity that came up or a special assignment. I don't want to give it to you because you're from this particular country, so I'm not going to give it to you. Or you're, not the correct gender, right? Or you, I don't know, your sexual orientation, I don't agree with it. Or your religion, I don't agree with it, okay? There's a whole bunch of stuff, right? But you can't do that. So that's disparate treatment. It's basically one-on-one, sort of, right? And the only person it's impacting is you, right? It's not impacting anybody else, right? Now we have something else called disparate impact, okay? Disparate impact is when the discrimination impacts a whole group of people, okay? It has wider implications, right? So for instance, and the thing about disparate impact is that it doesn't need to be intentional, whereas disparate treatment is intentional, right? You can do something unintentionally as an organization, as a leader, that you really didn't mean to do, You just didn't understand the consequences, right? And then when the consequences did happen, it turned out to be really bad for a certain group of people. So say, for instance, a company decides, you know what, we need to save some money. We're gonna get rid of all the, I don't know, we're just gonna put urinals in the bathroom. We're gonna take away the toilets, no toilets, okay? We're gonna save lots of money, right? Or we're gonna take away toilet paper or something stupid, okay? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, right? Okay, who do you think that's gonna affect if we take away the toilets from a bathroom? Everyone, right? But specifically, who's it gonna have more of an impact on?
The employees, they're for 8 hours.
On a woman, right? We gotta get more deeper, right? But yeah, on a woman, okay? The leadership didn't intend for that to be the consequence, right? But at the end of the day, it really impacts women because women, they use the bathroom. They don't go to urinals like guys, right? They need the bathroom. They need the toilet, right? And so now you've affected, right? The female gender or the female cohort within your organization, right? Even though you didn't mean to do it, right? You were just trying to save some money, okay? But you did. You need to fix it, okay? Because that's considered disparate impact. It's affecting a bigger group of people in a way that's detrimental to them, right? You don't want to have to ask the woman to go, oh, go across the street or go to the McDonald's or something. You need to use the bathroom, right? You can't. There's no toilets in this particular building, right? For males, you know, it's a little different. Like you could use the urinal, but if you need to do something else, you need to go elsewhere. Okay, that's illegal. Okay, and it doesn't matter. Like I said, if it's intentional, unintentional, it doesn't matter. Okay, so disparate treatment and disparate impact are the first two really basic, forms of discrimination that you'll kind of that you'll encounter, right? Because sometimes you have a boss and you'll feel like the boss is picking on you. Right? The boss is always like, this is not good enough, or I need you to do this, or I need you that. And you're like, wait a minute. I seen John's work, or how come John doesn't have to do this? I have to do it all the time, right? You may feel that way, right? And so you have to have some recourse or somewhere to go to be like, hey, my boss is not treating me fairly. I feel like he's kind of singling me out, amongst all the other people. And he's making me take out the trash every day. I understand that it's something that we need to do, but I don't. Why does it got to be me every day, right? Why can't we have 8 people in the office? Why can't one of them do it? Why don't we have rotational duties? Monday it's your day, Tuesday it's your day, Wednesday it's your day, right? Why does it got to be me all the time? I feel like he's discriminating against me or being prejudiced for whatever reason. I don't know, right? And so you have to understand that in the workplace that these things happen, and also that leadership makes decisions in bubbles that they don't really understand the first, second, and the third order effects of what they're doing. Okay, and companies do it all the time. They look at cost savings and say, you know what, let's cut this thing, let's do this, let's get rid of that. Okay, we're gonna save $1 million. Yeah, you could save $1 million, but then what's it gonna do to the workforce, right? What's the impact, and is it violating their rights, right? Are you still creating a fair, equal workplace, right? Is it going to be discriminatory against people that, are disabled, for instance, okay? Oh, let's get rid of the elevator. Well, John, he works upstairs, he's in a wheelchair. Yeah, he'll be all right. Maybe move him downstairs, right? Which they can do, right? That's fine, right? But they just can't nilly-willy just decide, oh, we're just gonna get rid of elevators and fire John, right? Because he's in the wheelchair. It doesn't work that way, right? So you have to pay attention there. All right. So some things that companies can do in which they can legally discriminate. Okay. So we have the first one called business necessity. All right. And it's just that the company will say, look, we couldn't hire this person or we had to fire this person because it was a business necessity. You guys probably aren't old enough or probably haven't seen any. You guys have never actually probably filled out a real job application manually. Manually?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes on the job application, depending on the job, you'll see something that says must be able to lift 40 pounds or more,
Yes.
right? Okay, that was something that was on pretty much every application for the most part, again, depending on the job. But it was also something that they used to discriminate against women. If they didn't want a woman in the job, they would say, hey, can you lift 40 pounds? Most women, maybe not, depending on the woman, right? You may not be able to lift 40 pounds, right? And they would say, well, we can't hire you. It's a business necessity that you be able to lift 40 pounds, okay? And so they will use that as an excuse. They can still use it, but it's very, very high threshold. Like you have to be able to prove this without a shadow of a doubt if you want to use it as a company, right? And you have to also be able to say, we have no other means in which to assist this person in picking up the 40 pounds, right? So you're trying to tell me there's nobody else that could help her. There's no other mechanism, no apparatus, no dolly, no nothing that can pick up the 40 pounds. How often is she doing this? How often is she picking up 40 pounds? Once every 6 months? Okay, that doesn't count, right? What other things are there that we can use to mitigate this problem, right? They didn't think about that before, right? But they can still use it, okay? And so it's probably the weakest defense that companies have in which to discriminate against someone, right? And it's just not, it wasn't just used against women, it's just used against people if they can make it fit to say, we don't want to hire you, right? When there were other reasons as to why they didn't want to hire him, right? But it's one of the legal defenses. The next one is a BFOQ, okay? Bona fide occupational qualification, right? And this is something that says, look, you don't have a certain qualification or certain requirement for the job, and so I'm going to discriminate against you and I'm not going to hire you, okay? So there was an interesting case, and I use it all the time in my class. Probably, I want to say 15 years ago, 16 years ago, right? There's this young lady, and this is a true case. She goes into a strip club. She's a dancer. She goes into the strip club and she's looking for a job, right? She goes in the strip club, they give her application, she starts to fill the application out. On the application, it asks, are you pregnant? Right? And she says, yes, I'm pregnant. Okay? And so the manager or whoever's the hiring guy says, sorry, can't hire you. She's like, why not? Because you're pregnant. So we can't hire you. Right? And so she goes and she gets a lawyer and says, I'm being discriminated against because I'm pregnant. Right? So they go to court. Right? What do you guys think happened? Thoughts? She lost? Why did she lose? Why do you think she lost?
Because she needs to do things that are better than women.
Like what? Like she needs, or she said she needs to do things that a pregnant woman cannot. So what if she's not, she wasn't showing? She was like, you couldn't, if you looked at her, you couldn't tell she was pregnant. All right. So she was in probably the first month, maybe, if that. Right. So you couldn't see. The only reason they knew she was pregnant is because she put in her application. She was being honest. All right. So they couldn't see. For all intents and purposes, she looked like she was ready to go. Okay. So why do you think they didn't hire her? Why do you think she lost the case? But she did lose the case. Why?
Because it requires special care for women in the workplace.
Yeah, a little bit. So there's a healthcare aspect to it, right? You're pregnant, right? You taking care of the baby, right? You maybe shouldn't be doing that, but science has shown that physical activity is actually good for pregnant women, so that's out the door.
Like,
You try
is there gonna be smoking in there or something?
smoking in there, true, but most strip clubs you can't smoke.
Only thing I could
But this is a good one.
think of is her being pregnant could interrupt her ability of performing the job that she's being hired to do.
But how? Why?
I mean, kind of hard to slide on the pole if you got a big old belly on it. No, sorry.
I don't know. I
It's like
see
modified
pregnant women do a lot of interesting things.
I mean,
Okay? Why? Thinking about the BFOQ and what we just, kind of mentioned, right? It's a qualification that you need for the job. Anybody? So think about,
If anything happens to her, things will happen to the baby.
you on, kind of, sort of, but not really. You on the health kick and you close, but that's not really the reason. All right?
Doesn't work for them.
Just give me the answer. So basically, think about what being a stripper or dancer means, right? If people are coming to the strip club, what do they come in to do at the strip club? Where do you go? Why did they go to a strip club?
Enjoy.
To see a woman, right? Okay? To see a woman, right? But seeing the woman is a visual thing, right? What is important when we're talking about that line of work? Visual, something visual, right? It needs to look good, right? Aesthetically, right? It needs to be sexy, it needs to be alluring, right? All right, don't be afraid, okay? We're all adults here, okay? We're grown, right? So it needs to have sex appeal, right? Anybody here want to see a pregnant woman on a pole?
Nope.
No, not unless you kind of weird.
That's a very special.
Right, especially for the kind of person, right?
Unless
Okay.
they're for that specific.
Right. So that becomes sort of like, okay, the sex appeal is gone because nobody wants to see a pregnant woman on a pole.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't want to see you dancing.
Should make some
Right.
good tips though.
I don't know. I don't know nothing
I would
about
help her
that.
out.
Yeah, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about that, right? But right, she has no sex appeal. She has no desired kind of desirability, right? So what am I going to do with that as a strip club owner? So I can't make any money off of you. You can't make any money because nobody's going to pay you to watch you dance, to do, do things. Even if I have you bartending or something like that, serving drinks, people still gonna look at you funny. They're like, what are you doing in a club if you're pregnant, right? You should not be working, you should be home or something, relaxing, right? And so because of that, the BFOQ here is sex appeal. Okay? And so because of that, they could discriminate against her and say, look, you don't have sex appeal. Come back after you have the baby. Okay? Then we can hire you. All right? But in the meantime, yes, you're not showing, but eventually you're going to. So why would we hire you now, knowing in 3 months you're gonna be showing, right? What are we gonna do with you? First thing, all right? Secondly, what's the other thing that you gotta think about?
The baby thing.
The baby thing, right? I want to make sure the baby's healthy, right? Okay, but there's something else that goes with that. How do I know? How do I make sure the baby's healthy?
The ultrasound.
Ultrasound, insurance, right? Who pays for that? The company, right? I don't want to pay for insurance for a baby that, no, I don't want to do that, okay? That's not something we do. We don't pay medical insurance and health insurance for babies, okay? That's just not in our business. Broken ankle, wrist, bad back, maybe. Babies, we're not paying that, okay? And so now it becomes another issue, right? Now I have to think about, oh, where my premium is that covered, right? Do I even have that as a premium coverage, right? As a company, when they buy insurance, they buy wholesale, okay? And so the company buys the insurance wholesale, and then they give out shares or whatever to each employee, and you go, pay your copay, and then that's it. The company covers the rest, right? The strip club said, no, we're not doing that. Okay. One, there's no sex appeal. We're not gonna make any money, with you in a few months. Two, we don't want to be on the hook for your health costs, right? Because it's expensive to have a baby, right? Then it ain't cheap, right? The Jello is even expensive. Okay. So all these things kind of converge into the point where they won the case because it's a legitimate BFOQ. You have to be able to have sex appeal. Okay? There's another case they had where Abercrombie and Fitch. Everybody familiar with Abercrombie and Fitch? They're in the mall. It's a clothing store, apparel store, right? You guys aren't familiar with Abercrombie and Fitch, huh?
Yeah.
A little bit, okay. Not everybody, but they're in the mall, right? And they have this. I think the eagle is their thing, their logo or whatever. Their
It's on
what was it?
most
Moose? Is it? I thought it was an eagle. What's an eagle? Oh, that's American Eagle. There, you're right. Okay, so it's a moose, right? I didn't know that, right? So we had a case, probably about 10 years ago, right? Young lady goes in, she's Muslim, right? She has burqa on and she goes in for the job interview and she gets the job, right? And then she starts working, she keeps her burqa on, and then the regional manager comes to visit the store. The regional manager goes to the store manager and says, hey, you have to fire her. And like, why? Because she needs to take the burqa off or she needs to get fired. Like, well, you really can't do that. Like, it's a religious expression, religious freedom. Like, no, not here. You need to fire her. But they fired her. She got a lawyer. Guess what? She lost too, right? Now, why do you think she lost?
But nobody's gonna know who's working inside the boot camp. That is one thing.
Well, she didn't have the full. She didn't have the full. She just had the head wrap and.
Because part of her marketing is looks.
Yes, because I think
Exactly.
they're not workers, they're like models or something. That's how they got away with it.
Both of you are right, okay? In the contract, it specifically says, we are looking for people that look like this, all right? And if you guys have ever seen any of the advertisements, like you say, they're all model looking, sort of, 6 feet tall, skinny, muscles, white, typically blonde, blue eyes, that kind of thing, right? She doesn't fit that description, right? Especially with the burqa on, right? And so it's written in the contract, specifically says you have to look this way, in which will let you get the job. If you don't look this way, or at least, appear to look this way, right? Or perceive that way, then we don't have to hire you. We can say, no, we're not gonna hire you, right? And that's basically what happened. And because she didn't want to take the burqa off, she got fired, she went and got the lawyer, she lost the case based on BFOQ, right? It's a qualification for the job because it's clearly stated in the contract. It's very, very explicit. Okay? It's not implied, it's explicit. It's written. You can read it, it says it right here, and under the law, they can do that because they have a brand, right? They have a brand to represent. And so if the brand is this, you can't tell them to hire this. Okay? They don't have to. And so on those terms, they can discriminate.
That's why I have to explain to several people, say, oh, why don't you get tattoos? Say, I can't, I wanna work for an airline.
Right.
Well, they can't discriminate against tattoos. They, well, on their
BFOQ, they
BFOQ,
can.
they can't.
They can. And they absolutely do.
They do.
They do discriminate, all right? If you really look at your flight attendants, I have a friend, she's a flight attendant. She has tattoos. When she goes to work, she covers the tattoos up with makeup. Because they don't want the tattoo to be visible. Okay? Because you're serving a very diverse population, right? And some people still are scared of people with tattoos, weirdly enough, right? Get nervous about seeing.
Cover, but then you're wearing your long sleeve shirt instead of the short
Right,
sleeve, but you
sleeve.
gotta make your long sleeve look presentable for a
Right.
whole work day.
Exactly. That's not gonna happen, right? So there's a lot of things that go on, but it's very specific to the company, right? So that's why you have BFOQs, because companies need to be able to protect their brand, right? They need to protect their image, right? And if their image is this, and everybody knows what their image is, you can't tell them to go against that, right? And so they can do whatever they want on those particular terms, okay? All right, so now if you as an employee decide you want to file a suit against your employer for discrimination or prejudice, you have to prove that, okay? The burden of proof is on you, right? Now, it's different in our legal system. If you go to court, the burden of proof is usually on the plaintiff. Well, it's still the plaintiff, same thing, right? It's still in the courts, right? So let's just say it goes to court. The district attorney has to prove that you did what they say you did, okay? Vice you trying to prove that you didn't do what they said you did, okay? If that makes any sense, okay? So the burden of proof is always on the individual, right? You have to come with the proof. The problem with that is that if you, as an individual, say, look, I feel like I was discriminated against, so there's some prejudice going on, right? I'm going to try to sue you, which, we'll get into that. That's another whole issue, right? But let's just say you make it that far. and you try to sue them, right? It's on you. Get your lawyer, get the proof, present it in court, right? How much you think that cost? A lot. How much time you think that's gonna take?
A month?
Longer than that, right? It's whatever, a month, 2 months, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. That's not gonna happen in a short period of time, right? Guess what you don't have that the company has?
Legal fee,
Money.
legal, thing.
Did you say money?
Money.
Money, right? You don't have the resources, right? Imagine you as an individual trying to fight Qualcomm. I'm taking you to court, Qualcomm. Qualcomm's like, whatever, talk to one of our 80 lawyers, right? That on retainer. You, what are you doing? You're in the library reading books so you can go to court to defend yourself, right? Or if you have a little bit of money, or maybe one of your cousins is a lawyer, you got lucky, and they can come in and defend you, right? After a while, guess what? You're gonna run out of money, and that's what they're waiting for. Because they have infinite amount of money. It's like fighting the government. You pretty much will not win fighting the government. Because why? Unlimited resources. The government can wait forever because the government's not going anywhere. Okay? Matter of fact, the government using your money against you, right? Because they collect taxes from you. Right? And we're going to use that with our lawyers to come get you. Okay? Perfect example, right, is our new president. Okay? All the legal issues he was going through, right? With Jack Smith, the Justice Department, all this other stuff, right? All those things are gonna go away now. Okay, it's gonna disappear. All right, doesn't mean he's right. It's just gonna disappear because now he can make things go away, right? But at the end of the day, because he's Donald Trump and he had lots of money, he was able to continue this fight. But if it was you and I, all right, we're not gonna continue this fight. Okay? You guys probably have never been audited by the IRS, or has anybody ever been audited by the IRS? You guys don't pay taxes, haven't paid taxes yet, right? For the most part, right? Getting audited by the IRS is like the worst thing ever. Okay? Because they tax you and then they say, oh, you made a mistake. And you could have made a mistake, but the IRS is very, very like they're mean. Okay, that's all I can say. They're mean and they're aggressive and they will come after you, right? You don't have the resources to fight the IRS, right? And that's what most companies are hoping for, right? That you want to go ahead and file a grievance or a lawsuit. This is going to wait you out because you don't have the money, right? You don't have the resources. This is where the EEOC comes in. This is why you don't get any money from the EEOC, but you get what we call remedies, right? Where we are going to make you whole. Whatever promotion, whatever job assignment, whatever it was that you feel like you didn't get, you were discriminated against, and if the case goes and get for you, you're going to get all those things back, right? With the associated pay, right? But it's not like when you go to court and you have a civil case or just a regular lawsuit that you're going to get a big chunk of money. It doesn't work that way, all right? So the EOC usually is the alternative or the course of action for most employees because we don't have the resources to fight a Qualcomm or a McDonald's or any big company that has unlimited resources, right? And lawyers at their disposal, right? McDonald's has a lawyer for their lawyers. Okay, that's how many lawyers they have, right? So you're not gonna beat them. Okay, they're just gonna wait you out. They're gonna wait till you spend all your little money, and then they're gonna be like, oh, we're gonna give you $10. You good with that? Okay, cool. And move on. All right. And meanwhile, you've gone through all this stuff years and years, right? Suffering, lost all your money. Your house is probably gone because you probably, took a loan on the mortgage, right? People are mad, divorced. It's just ugly, right? So you have to be cautious as to how you approach these things. But at the end of the day, burden of proof is really on you, and your best course of action is to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to use the EOC mechanism. I'm going to file a grievance, right? But before you even get to all that, right, let's just say there is an issue at hand and there are facts that are, in your favor, right? Or just an issue, period, right? 9 times out of 10, if you get with a company, they have the what we call the ADR clauses, right? The ADR clauses are alternate dispute resolution, right? So within that umbrella, we have mediation, we have arbitration, okay? Most companies nowadays, before you do anything else, if you have a problem with them, you need to go to mediation or you need to go to arbitration, okay? You cannot like go off and say, I'm gonna get a lawyer, I'm gonna sue you. No. If you work in a company, you sign the contract, the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna mediate, okay? And if we can't mediate, we're gonna arbitrate. Now, and we have a whole week where we discuss ADR, right? But mediation arbitration, there's a difference. Mediation is that you have a third party that sits down and you listen to both sides and they mediate. And they say, okay, are you willing to compromise on this? Are you willing to compromise on that? So we can meet in the middle, okay? And both of you may say, I'm okay with this, but I'm not okay with that, right? And the thing about mediation is that it's non-binding, okay? Which means that if the mediator says, this is what I think, you could say, I don't like it. I'm not gonna adhere to that. I'm gonna go take my chances with a lawyer or go to the EOC. I don't care about that, right? Arbitration is different, right? Arbitration typically involves a retired judge or some kind of lawyer, and that person listens to both sides and comes to a decision about what needs to be done. And that is binding. Okay? That means that whatever the arbitrator says, that's what's gonna go. Okay? If the arbitrator says the company owes you $20 million, the company has to pay $20 million. Okay? It's binding. Right? They can appeal, right? But most times, appeal is pretty useless because you're gonna appeal to the same person. Like, hey, we got some new information. Okay, what is it? There's not enough. All right, we'll drop it to 15 million. How about that? Okay, but it's binding, all right? And so most companies, not all companies, have mediation arbitration clauses. So you just can't go off and sue companies, right? Now, why do you think companies want you to mediate and arbitrate first prior to going and get a lawyer and all that stuff?
It's too heavy for the company itself too, because it will be affecting the public.
Yeah.
And it will become like a news and sort of
Perfect.
the share price of the company is gonna go down.
Exactly. That's all it is. It's very much a perception thing. Okay? We have to protect our image. We can't have stuff out there that says we're a bad company, that we don't treat our employees well, right? Because then that becomes a liability. No one's gonna come work for us. People are gonna start leaving if they think that we mistreat our employees, right? And we like to keep everything in-house. We don't want our dirty laundry, right? This is family business. When it's family business, you keep it inside, right? If we discuss it within the family, yes, I don't like you, but nobody needs to know that outside the house, right? When we leave the house, we're buddy-buddy. When we get in the house, I'll punch you in the face, okay? It's family business, right? And we all know, we all got family members like that, right? I have a cousin, I love him. When we're out and we're together, even if he's wrong, I got his back. But as soon as he get in the house, I'm like, you were so stupid. Why would you do that? You were wrong, right? The same thing. They want to keep this stuff inside house so that they can resolve it because they don't want it to go out because the public perception is what they're trying to protect, their image, right? It's what they're trying to protect. To make sure that nobody has a bad perception of them because nowadays, especially, if people think a company's bad or is not really a great place, they don't want to deal with them, okay? This is why, Yelp is so effective, right? Anybody use Yelp here? Nobody uses Yelp?
Okay.
Yeah, I use Yelp all the time, right?
What's that?
Yelp, 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 no? Okay. So Yelp basically is a customer review system or process. It's an app. You get the app, you download it, and so it has basically all the things, the businesses that are in the maybe around the world, okay? And so let's just say you were thinking about coming to seeing you, right? Before you came here. You look it up on Yelp, and it has a bunch of reviews and it has stars. It has star system. 5 stars is the best, 1 star is terrible, okay? But it gives the opportunity for the patrons, the customers to say, CMU's great, but I didn't like their classroom. CMU's cool, but Dr. K sucks, right? Don't take Dr. K's classes, he's terrible, right? Or Dr. K is great, I really like him, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? And what that does, it helps you as a consumer decide whether or not you want to deal with this particular company, right? This organization, this particular, you know, let's say restaurants, right? A lot of people use it for restaurants and stuff like that. Let's just say there's a new restaurant and there, you know, people have been going, oh, it's great, great, great. And you go to Yelp and Yelp has a bunch of reviews on it. And one of the reviews says, this place is great, but I saw a cockroach. I saw a mouse. Are you gonna go to go eat there? Probably not, right? You're probably not gonna go eat there, right? So they don't want any parts of that. They don't want those kind of reviews. They want good reviews. I went there, it was clean, the food was great. It was a little expensive, but that's okay. You know, that's not a bad thing. It just that's how much it costs, right? But if you put that, hey, I was eating and I saw a roach, or I saw a mouse or some kind of insect or furry creature, no one's gonna go, right? You're gonna be out of business. Or the product is bad, right? This thing sucks. It's supposed to do this. I had it for 1 week, terrible. Okay? So companies are always worried about their perception, about their image, because that's directly linked to whether or not people are gonna come and use their business and use their services, right? If I know for sure I'm gonna go somewhere and it's bad customer service, the product's bad, the food is bad, it just happens to be the name is, you know, fancy, right? Or the name is popular, right? And I go, but it's not the same experience that I thought I was gonna get, right? People go to Yelp and they'll put a review there to help other people know, like, hey, this is what it's really about, right? This is what, when you actually go, this is what has happened to me, right? So companies make sure that their perception is intact, their public image is intact, okay? All right, so the next thing we're gonna talk about retaliation. What time is it?
6:30.
Okay.
Break time.
It ain't break time yet.
No, break time.
Big time yet. Retaliation, okay? So let's just say, for instance, you're at a job and you put in a grievance, right? You say, hey, my manager did XYZ to me. I feel that I got passed with a promotion or an assignment because of, you know, whatever. And they say, okay, fine, we're gonna investigate, okay? So while they're investigating, right, what happens to you? Where do you think they put you? Like, what, do they leave you in the same department? What happened? Did
Administrative.
administrative leave, maybe, right? Or they move you to a different department or a different thing, right? But let's just say that your boss, you know, is still pretty close, right? It's kind of like here, but you're over here, whatever the case may be, right? Or even they keep in the same department. And your boss says, you know what? Since you filed this grievance against me, now I'm going to give you all the crappy stuff to do. Okay? I'm gonna treat you bad. I'm gonna talk about you. I'm gonna make you do things that I'm not gonna make anybody else do, right? That's what we call retaliation. Trying to get back at the person, right? Or trying to scare them into dismissing their suit, their grievance, or just trying to be mean to them because they filed a complaint against you, right? That is illegal, right? You cannot retaliate against someone just because someone said you did something to them and they're not particularly happy about it. You cannot, as a person that's part of the grievance, start to treat them poorly, right? And it happens quite often, right? Where, oh, bless you, sexual harassment, right? You're sitting there and you have a boss and they're a little too touchy-feely, right? You say, hey, could you not do that, right? You tell them once, don't do that. I don't like people touching me. They keep doing it, right? Some people can't help themselves. And you tell them the second or third time, they keep on doing it. And then finally, you go to HR, says, hey, I want to file a grievance. My boss keeps touching me, even though I've told him or her on numerous occasions, I don't like to be touched. They have disregarded my request, and so it's making me uncomfortable, and it's creating what we call a hostile work environment for me. I get nervous before I got to come to work. I get anxiety. I don't feel good. I'm just not happy at work anymore, okay? And the boss decides, oh, okay, that's what you want to do? Okay, cool. You see that thing right there? You're gonna take the trash out every day. I want you to get the little knife and I want you to scrape the gum off the bottom of all the desk. Okay, that's gonna be your new job. All right, and when you're done with that, change the light bulbs and dust the ceiling. What does that have to do with my engineering job? Nothing. It's just retaliation, right? They want to get back at them, right? So that's illegal, right? You can't do that, right? If the person filed grievance against you, you just gotta sit tight and wait, okay? Because the facts are being investigated, and if it turns out that the facts are corroborated and it's true that you were harassing them, guess what? Some stuff's gonna happen, okay? You may lose your job, more likely not, but you may lose your job, right? That's the good thing about the EOC process. You don't necessarily have to fire anyone, right? But most times, if you want to rectify the problem and it's a person, you usually gotta let them go, right? You typically let them go because then it's not good for the organization. It's not good for the department, right? If I know that you filed a grievance against the boss, right? And maybe the boss is, that's just their nature. It's just their personality and they can't help themselves. What's to say that they're not gonna do the same thing to me, right? So you gotta get rid of that person, right? Because you wanna create an atmosphere where people feel like they're protected and that it's safe, right? And if something happens to me, I can go to someone else and say, look, my boss did this, the boss needs to go. The boss needs to be punished, right? So retaliation is definitely something that you don't wanna be involved in and take action on. All right, let's take a break now. 10 minutes, come on back and we'll jump into Title 7. Okay? Good?
Weekend, setting myself for the weekend.
Oh, what you doing?
Do the bar.
Well,
Chill out.
start talking about.
Already back. Okay. All right, so next thing we're gonna talk about is the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII, okay? And so this serves as the basis basically for all the civil rights of, people in general, or population in general, but specifically Title VII addresses the labor force, okay? And so this is why I was talking about the seven protected classes or the protected classes in general, right? When we're talking about the sex, race, national origin, sexual orientation, and that kind of thing, right? So the first Civil Rights Act was in 1863, okay? And so that protected basically the rights of the people that were around in that time, right? The problem with that particular Civil Rights Act is that it only protected white males, okay? Because at that point, the majority were white males that kind of ran the country and basically decided on everything, right? So that wasn't going to really work as we progressed into, the 20th century and that kind of thing, right? It just doesn't bode well, right? Because up to that point, basically, everyone was considered half a person except for a white man. Okay, women were considered property. Minorities were considered less than a person, and even in some cases, if you had a slave, that was considered property. Okay, and so they had no real rights under the law. Right? Depending where you were at, you know, that would kind of switch up, but for the most part, there were no real rights to be had as a minority, as a woman, or unless you were a white male. Okay, so 1863 comes and goes. We start to revamp things, start to change things around. 1900s comes around. We have industrial revolution, and then there's a call for a huge surge in labor. Okay, and where we need people that are more equipped to do manual labor. Right, we start switching over from agrarian or rural farming, and we get into the city life. Right, and so with manufacturing and those kind of things, you need a lot of hands. You need a lot of people within the organization to do manual labor, right? Simple tasks and that kind of thing, right? And so we fast forward and we get to the 60s and we have the Civil Rights Act of 1964, okay? And so this is critical in many, many aspects. And a lot of people suffered for this, okay? This is one of the things that they believe, everybody familiar with John F. Kennedy, right? Okay, and the Kennedy family. One of the main components of John F. Kennedy's presidency was making sure that he could unite the country. Okay, we had a huge discrimination problem in the United States at that point, right? African Americans were being discriminated against, right? We had a period where we had just gotten out of the Korean War, right? And so Koreans and Japanese were being discriminated against because of World War II and that kind of thing, right? But predominantly, African Americans were being discriminated against in many facets of their lives, right? Couldn't get a good job. It was hard to get into good schools, that kind of thing. You had to live in certain neighborhoods, and they had something called redlining. All right, and you're familiar with redlining? Anybody heard the term before? Redlining basically is a process in integrated infrastructure process in which when the banks looked at a map of an area and they were thinking about lending money to people to buy homes, there were certain areas where, okay, we will lend people that want to buy homes in this area, we will lend them money. If they're outside of this area, we won't lend them money because these are the Black communities. This is the Hispanic community. This is the Asian community. We're not giving them any money, right? And so they would draw a red line around the area in which they were going to discriminate against, right? So it's called redlining, right? We don't have that anymore, okay? Sort of, right? And this is not on paper, right? But it's redlining. So 1964, President Kennedy is trying to find a way in which to, bring the nation together and to really kind of really help bolster the whole thing about Vietnam. And there was a lot of things going on in that point, right? And so he came up with this legislation and said, look, we need to protect the rights of everyone, right? It doesn't matter if they're Black, white, purple, green, man, woman, it doesn't matter. If they're here in the United States, they're American and they deserve the rights of Americans. And we will not discriminate against people because of their race, gender, not sexual orientation, but religion, creed, right? Political affiliation. We're not going to do that, right? And so President Kennedy started putting together this civil rights legislation to get the Civil Rights Act 1964 passed. Well, right before he passed it, right, he ended up getting shot. He got assassinated, right, in Dallas, right, ended up dead. And then, took over?
Lyndon B. Johnson.
Lyndon B. Johnson, thank you, right, LBJ took over, right? And LBJ was a good old Southern country boy, all right? And if you know about anything about how racism worked in the United States, is the Southern states very much were about slave ownership and racist and prejudice. The further north you went, the more liberties you had as a minority. West was just kind of wide open, like do you, just like it is now, right? Everybody know how California is. Very progressive, kind of hippie, live your life, mind your own business, right? So the South is very much, ingrained in slavery and that kind of thing, and saw it as sort of their right, right? Lyndon B. Johnson was from that mold. He grew up in the South. He believed in Southern tendencies, believed in Southern principles, right? But he was also the president, right? And you have to understand the role of the president. You're president for everyone, right? You're not president for a certain group of folks, right? So he decided that in honor of John F. Kennedy, he was going to go ahead and push this legislation. He's going to make sure that it happened, right? So he went through, tried to get it enacted. a few times, 2, 3 times, it didn't pass. And then finally, the fourth time, I think it is, it finally passed, right? But he had to go around and talk to a bunch of senators, promise people things, right? That's how it really works. The president doesn't have any real power, right? The president has veto power, but only to a certain degree. The House and the Senate is where things happen. Your senators, your congressmen, that's who has the power. Okay? It's not the president. President, he has executive branch and their leaders, but there's only so much they can do, all right, as far as getting policy initiated, all right? And so he had to go shake a few hands, make a few deals with the devil, and it got passed, right? And so 1964, Civil Rights Act was passed, and now legally, I could have a suit or a claim to say, you can't discriminate against me because of my color. You can't discriminate against me because of my religion, right? And so companies had to adhere to that. They had no other choice but to follow those rules. And so what you saw was an improvement in the workplace. Diversity started happening, right? You started seeing workplaces where it's like, okay, now guess what? You have to hire. So we don't have to hire, but you don't, because we didn't have affirmative action as yet, right? You need to consider these people, and you can't just arbitrarily dismiss them and not hire them because they're black or they're Hispanic or they're Asian, right? You can't do that anymore, right? So that's where that comes from, okay? And this is the basic, philosophy or basic, premise of CRA 64, right? And so in 1993, President Clinton put in the no sexual orientation discrimination, right? So every once in a while, we add to this. We add different things, okay? So 1993, President Clinton added no sexual orientation, or anybody ever heard of don't ask, don't tell? No? Okay, it's an old policy, but it really applied to the military. Because if you were in the military, you couldn't be homosexual. Okay, you couldn't be gay. You had to be straight, that kind of thing, right? They wouldn't let you in the military, right? And if they found out you were homosexual, they kick you out. If you got lucky, most times you pretty much get beat and you probably end up getting killed and murdered, and nobody would say anything, right? So it's a very bad time for the military and to be gay in that environment, right? And so in order to alleviate that, he decided, look, come out with don't ask, don't tell, right? We don't care. We don't want to know. Just keep your business at home, right? Don't bring it to work. And we're going to put a clause in to protect other people in the workplace that are getting discriminated against because of their sexual orientation, right? So that was in 1993. And so as we've gone on, things have, evolved. We've added other things within that, right? We've expanded it now to LGBTQ IA plus. There's a bunch of other stuff. There's a lot of stuff that goes with that I'm not really too familiar with, right? But we've expanded it to protect transgender, right? Fluid. What are the other terms? Some other different types of sexual orientation. There's a bunch of different ones out of queer, right? Those are all different categories of sexuality. Okay, those are all protected now under the Civil Rights Act, right? That came out 2020, 19 and 20? I can't remember it. It was recently, all right? Same-sex marriage. That's new, okay? That's all part of the CRA, 1964 or 19. We say 1964 because that's the original, right? But it's all, as it evolves, every time they add something, it just becomes that particular year. But 1964 is the original, okay? And so for this to apply to the company, you have to have 15 or more employees. Okay? It doesn't apply to everybody, right? You have to have 15 or more employees. The other thing is that if you receive or take any government funds, this applies to you. Okay? There are a few institutions where it doesn't apply, right? But all educational institutions, public and private, state and local government, private and public employment agencies, right? Labor unions with 15 or more members, joint labor management committees for apprenticeship and training, okay? They apply to all these things, right? But the real qualifier is 15 or more employees. If you have 14 employees, this does not apply to you as an organization. That doesn't mean that you don't follow the rules. That doesn't mean you discriminate. It just means that the government's not gonna come in and step in and try to handle stuff for you, right? Because the assumption is that if you have a company, you have 14 people in your company, you probably know each other pretty well. So whatever issues you have, you probably could resolve it, right? And if you hire someone and you didn't know that they were a homosexual, you didn't know they were Catholic, or you didn't know they were black, it's a problem, right? You only got 14 people in your company, and you didn't know that, these people were this particular, the way they were, right? So the notion is that 15 or more, we understand that you may not know everyone in your company. 15, 14 or less, we assume that you know everybody in the company, right? Yeah, question?
Let me see, during the hiring process, right? Can you ask about that?
No. No, you cannot. Okay? You can't ask any questions about sexuality. You can't ask any questions about personal relationships. You can't ask any questions about religion. Nope. Nothing. Political association, none of that. Okay? At all. So now there are some jobs where that's important, right? Those questions are necessary to ask, right? But the way you get around it is to say, do you mind talking about that? You can ask the person, do you mind talking about what your intentions are, right? Even then, that's kind of sketchy, right? Because what does that have to do with the job? Then nothing, right? Doesn't matter if I'm married. Doesn't matter if I'm Catholic, right? Until it does, right? So let's say, for instance, I don't ask you what religion you are, right? Because that's illegal. And the job you're, getting hired for, we work on Saturdays, right? Now, Jewish religion, right? Jewish faith, the 7-day Adventists, they go to church on Saturdays. Okay? So now what happens if you're coming to me every week and, hey boss, I need Saturdays off. Well, everybody wants Saturdays off, right? It's the weekend. Everybody wants weekends off, right? Maybe that's a nice job, right? I can't give you every Saturday off. Well, it's my religious, I got it. I'm gonna respect that, but you need to work something out with some of your coworkers, right? You need to go and say, look, do you mind swapping out a Friday for a Saturday, right? This is where you have to get creative and kind of talk to your employees, because as the employer, right, I can't ask that question, but when the situation occurs, I can tell you no. You can't have every Saturday off. I give you some Saturdays, right? Based on the rotation of what's going on, because that's unfair to all the other people, right? What if there's someone that, is Catholic? Sundays, Catholics go to church, right? And they want every Sunday off. But Sundays, you're free, right? You want to work Sundays, right? Or you don't want to work Sundays either, to tell you the truth, right? You just want the whole weekend off. You can't do that, right? And so companies basically don't ask those questions, right? When the situation occurs, they kind of handle it, right? But you want to get a gauge exactly on what you're dealing with, and you can kind of get around that by just saying, hey, do you mind talking about it? Do you mind letting me know, like, what the way they do it is, what would your schedule look like based on what you need, right? And then most people go, well, I like to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and then have my weekends off. Like, okay, cool. We can accommodate that to a certain degree, but understand that it has to be within the normal rotation of what all the employees are going through. I just can't make a special schedule for you, right? So if it comes down that you have to work Saturday, I'm gonna put you on the schedule for Saturday because you haven't worked a couple Saturdays, and there might be other people that need Saturdays off, right? So if it's the normal routine, right, I'll schedule you, but that doesn't mean that you can't go ask your coworkers like, hey, you mind switching out with me? Because there's always somebody that doesn't mind switching out, right? There's always somebody that says, I don't care, I work Saturdays. You want to switch? Okay, you come in Monday, I come in Saturday. Cool? And you have this arrangement with them, and they take all your Saturdays, right? So that's kind of how you can get around that, right? But you can't ask them about anything, sexual orientation, how many kids they have, none of that, right? How much money does your husband make? How much money does your wife make? None of that, okay? That's all illegal, right? From the aspect of, labor laws and what you can and can't do, right? So if you go to a job interview and the person who's interviewing starts asking you personal questions that have nothing to do with the job, you can politely say, you shouldn't be asking me that, right? More likely, you're probably not gonna get a job, but at the same time, the person will know that you're aware of the law and they'll be hesitant to ask you stupid questions, okay? So keep that in mind. But when we talk about Civil Rights Act 1964, it really is about the 15 employees, okay? And if you don't have 15 employees, then not that you don't have to worry about it, but you have to kind of self-govern, right? You gotta, do the right thing without someone kind of oversight, okay? And so you'll find that a lot of companies, 1991, there you go. All right, you'll find that a lot of companies will make sure that, when they do interviews and they're bringing people in, that they have a very scripted, questionnaire. They have very specific questions that they're asking, and the hiring manager needs to stick to that, right? And then sometimes you get an interview and it's very personable, and you start talking about football, basketball, something you have in common that's generic, and you never even get to the question. They go, "You're hired," right? Because you kind of fit with the boss, you guys get along, and the personalities are cool, so yeah, we'll bring you on, right? And that's really what it is at a job interview. They don't care about your credentials because they already know what you can do and what you can't do. And it doesn't matter when you get to the company, they're gonna ask you to forget all that and do something different, right? So we want you to do it this way, okay? Because that's the way we do it here. I don't care what it says in the book, I don't care what you learned in school, I don't care what you did in your last company. We do it this way here, all right? All right, so 1991, we kind of talked about this a little bit, right? Requires employees show that an employee practice job related to the position is consistent with business necessity, free provision to claim compensatory and punitive damages for the victims of intentional discrimination, okay? And so, basically, 1991, they put a clause in that says, look, if the person files a lawsuit, then they can be compensated, right, to some degree, right? And the compensation will be based on whether or not it was pain and suffering, all that stuff you see on TV and the legalese, that you hear in the news, right? It goes to trial, and then the jury says, oh, we're gonna award this person $20 million and another 10 million for pain and suffering. Okay, this is where that comes from. All right, where we intentionally discriminate. Yes, ma'am.
When I was a preschool teacher in Mexico,
Mhm.
it's not the same laws, I guess, but I had to do hours of psychological tests,
Mhm.
and I remember there was a lot of questions about like sex life,
Mhm.
like are you satisfied with your sex
Right,
life and
yeah.
stuff like that. And I didn't mind at all because in my head I thought maybe because you're working with kids, they want to make sure
Yes.
you're not like a
Right.
perv or something.
But yeah.
But at that time I had an American boyfriend,
Mm.
and I told him about all the questions. And he's like, you can
Yes, it
sue
is,
them.
right.
That's wrong. And I'm like, I mean, I don't know if I could, but I don't
Right.
mind because I understood the situation.
Right.
Or like maybe why would they? But that was just
No,
kind of
no,
weird.
it's not, so every country, that's why I prefaced last week, right, when we started the class, that this is based on American mindset, right? You're not gonna find this in other countries, right? You're gonna find the questions like, how often do you have sex?
Yeah, that
What
was
does your
one of the
husband do?
questions,
Right, they wanna know, right? Because they know they can make decisions based off of that, whether or not to hire you. Because it's all, at the end of the day, it's all attached to money, right? If they think you're gonna cost them money, they're not gonna hire you, right? So they wanna know kind of what your habits are, what your patterns are, what it is that you plan for the future, right? And then, as you said, you working with kids is different, right? Even in the United States here, it used to, when you go work with kids or you're gonna go get a job like a preschool teacher or daycare, that kind of thing, there's a whole separate thing they do for that. Okay, I forgot what's called scan or
Yeah, you gotta go and learn the particular thing.
yeah.
You gotta graduate from teaching.
You gotta get your teaching
Not from MBA,
certification.
you cannot just walk in and get a job as a teacher.
No, not as preschool or elementary school, right?
Yeah.
even high school can. Like college, university, yeah, I can walk in as a professor, like I need a job. Nobody cares. Okay. But if you're teaching lower level school, where elementary, even up to middle school, sometimes high school, they do something called a scan. I can't remember what it's called. Basically, they do another background check, right? They take your fingerprints, they go check all the prison systems, they check all the pedophile systems, they check all that stuff. Okay. Here,
Now, I had a friend of mine that in high school that he got a job teaching after college at a high school that was 15 minutes away, where he had his, I don't know, lady or something. I'm gonna call her a lady because she was a minor, but he had a 2-year-old with this girl and she was 17 years old and he was like 21. I said, man, their background checks suck.
right? Yeah. Well, did he have that prior to the job or while he was on the job?
Prior, so
Yeah,
yeah,
that
I don't know how that slipped through.
bad.
And here in the US, I worked in a daycare and they did make me do a
Scan, yeah,
fingerprint
mhm.
and all that background check that it's one that they say they send to the FBI.
Yeah, yeah. It goes to FBI, goes to all the other big 3-letter agencies that it could check your background to see if you had any issues with kids, any, molestation, rape, anything sexually kind of orientated, anything like that, any crimes. They want to check, they want to know because they're not gonna have you working with kids. You have any sexual history as being a predator, and it's not gonna happen,
And
right?
it's along to the class. It was funny because they have all these things they do, they check to make sure you're a nice person to
Mhm.
take care of the kids. And in that school, that was one of the best schools in Mexico, a kid got molested by it was like a Catholic
Catholic school, yeah,
so
by the
by like
priest.
a priest.
Yeah.
And it's like they check all the teachers and everyone, and then that priest is the one who.
So one of the institutions that is exempt from all of this are religious institutions. Okay? Churches, any religious institution is exempt. They don't have to follow these rules. Okay? And so this is where you kind of get the manifestation of Catholic priests kind of going under the radar, having molested kids over centuries and a long time in the Catholic Church because they don't have to go through all that. Okay? They're exempt. They're exempt from taxes, they're exempt for a lot of things, right? And so you'll find that a lot of times there are some bad people within the church, right? Some people that are doing things they shouldn't be doing, but they're not gonna really get caught unless someone says something, right? And we've seen a rash and really a exposure of the Catholic Church, right? In the past 15, 20 years, where all these priests have been molesting these kids for a long time. And even I think it was 2 weeks ago, they came out with this big verdict for like a group of like, I think it was 400 people that said they had got molested. And I think it was like,
They've also been related to like human trafficking.
yeah, human trafficking, yep. I think it was like $1.1 billion. And so each of them would get, I think it was 400 something thousand dollars after it was all said and done, right? But you really can't, there's no amount of money that's gonna fix that, right? If you've been molested, you're going through those things, there's nothing gonna really repair that and get you back to normal and normal life and thinking about life differently. Because most molesters go on to molest other people, right? They go on to molest kids, all right? And so, Civil Rights Act was, adheres to those particular rules and regulations to make sure everything's good. But the churches, religious institutions are not, don't have to adhere to those rules, right? They have a different category for them altogether, but they also open themselves up to, having predators, right? In plain sight, just sitting there and just molesting kids, right? Molesting people and that kind of thing, right? So, not the great side of it, but it is what it is, right? All right, okay, so affirmative action, all right? One of probably the more controversial topics. Anybody know what affirmative action is? Affirmative action? No, never heard of it? Okay, that's good. Okay, that's kind of good. All right. So affirmative action is a policy that was put in place that helps to level the playing field against discrimination. All right. So at one point, the United States again had a lot of trouble with being fair to minorities. So this is very, very relevant and prevalent in the school system, right? So what's happening is that people would apply to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, just college, big colleges in general, and if they were a minority, they typically didn't get in. They were particularly denied. No matter how good their grades were, they were denied because of their race, ethnicity, religion, or whatever the case may be. The only ethnicity that or group of people that got in to those schools were Chinese. Okay? Couple of things. Chinese folks basically had a reputation for being good at math, STEM, very sound and savvy in those particular aspects. And China would also facilitate payment, right? Where, hey, look, let my child into your school, I'll make sure to make a big donation. Let me come to the country, I'll make sure that I give you $20 million for something. Okay? That's kind of how that went, right? And because of our connection with China, right, as far as our relationship when it comes to manufacturing, right? Because China is the biggest manufacturer in the world, okay? Used to be the biggest economy, United States is back on top now, but China is in decline right now. They're having a few little problem with the economy, right? But they're still the major manufacturer in the world, right? If you want something made, you want to get it cheap, you go to China, okay? Because they make it, no questions asked, no problem, right? So Chinese would get into the schools, whatever the case may be, to basically where it got to the point where more Chinese were being admitted to these schools than anything else, right? But either way, affirmative action was put into place to level the playing field. And all it says is, look, if the person meets the minimum requirements and they're a minority, you have to let them in. You have to accept them, okay? It doesn't lower the standards. It just says if they meet the standards, then you have to give them an opportunity to compete, right? Because what was happening was that you'd have a minority with a 4.0, you'd have a white person with a 3.5. The white person with 2.5 would get in, the minority with the 4.0 would not. Same identical place, they came from the same school, same education, same things, it's just that the GPA was higher on one side than the other, they wouldn't get in, okay? And so that becomes a problem, right? Because what happens is you have a school full of the same people, right? If I'm letting the same people into the school and I'm denying Hispanics, I'm denying Asian, I'm denying African Americans, and I have a school full of just one thing, Caucasians or men or women, right? That school is not going to grow. It's not gonna, you're not getting anything out of that, right? The experience in going to college is being in a room like this, right? This is why I like teaching here. Because no place else, no other school am I gonna get this variety of students. None of you are from the United States. Who's from the US here? Who's born and raised here? No one. That's not the same if you go down to USD or UCSD or SDSU. The reverse. Okay? And so what that does, affirmative action does, it makes it more diverse. It opens it up. And it gives people a fair chance that deserve it, right, to get enrolled into school, right? Affirmative action, don't listen to anyone that tells you anything different. There's no lowering of the standards, okay? If the minimum GPA to get into Harvard is 3.0, and you as a minority have a 3.0, and you meet all the other qualifications, they'll let you in, okay? And so people think that affirmative action is something that is a mandate. It's not a mandate. It's not like you have to do it. The only time that you see people or schools that have to do affirmative action plans is when they did something wrong, right? So for instance, Harvard, Brown, Yale, Princeton, all the big Ivy League schools, they just got sued 2-3 years ago by, anybody know? Who sued those schools?
There was a documentary too about it, the varsity view.
There was a documentary about it, but I didn't watch it. I don't know what it was called,
What
but,
about that thing?
who sued them? Did anybody know who sued them? No? It was the Chinese students. They sued Harvard, Yale, Brown, Cornell, Yale, and then Princeton, right? Because they said that they were getting discriminated against because their acceptance rate had dropped, okay? Because of affirmative action, right? Because now I'm not just looking at Asians as, the diversity. Now I have to look at everybody as diversity, right? And so it has to come from someplace, right? And so the Asian or the Chinese demographic dropped a little bit, acceptance rates dropped as far as, getting into these big schools, and all the other ones went up. And so they were kind of not even, sort of, right? Not really even, but they were getting closer together, right? And so the Chinese students sued Harvard, Yale, Princeton for discrimination, right? Because they felt like affirmative action had affected their acceptance rate. Okay. Now, whether or not what happened, I don't remember. I don't think some things came out of it because Harvard was definitely had a built-in system that was specifically geared to recruit and admit Chinese students more than anything else. But it wasn't just because they were better. It had really a lot to do with the networking and the connections of the Chinese folks that were coming to the school, right? They had lots of money. And so they wanted to be affiliated with that because if you know anything about the way school system works, it's all about research, right? And research takes money. And Harvard has one of the biggest endowments in the world. Harvard has over $1 billion of just money that's been given to them that they've grown and they use for research, they use for scholarship, they use for a bunch of stuff, right? But that money has to come from someplace. It's not generated from the tuition. It's generated from donations, from alumni, right? Think about it this way. If you look at a majority of the former presidents, if you look at the Senate and the House, you'll see how many of them are Harvard, Yale, Princeton graduates. It's not accident. It's a mechanism, right? It's built that way, right? To where if you matriculate through that system, you get into these networking particular circles where such and such knows who I graduated, Obama graduated from Harvard, oh, I know Obama's cousin. Hey, Obama, can you get me into Harvard? Yeah, sure, no problem. I just call a couple people, get you in, okay? And they have legacy, right? Legacy admittance, right? Everybody understand? Legacy admittance basically, if your parents went to that school, you automatically get in. Okay, so there's a lot of students there that are there because their parents went there, not because they really deserve to be in the school, right? But you have to meet the minimum requirements, right? You just can't get in. So again, affirmative action is not a mandate. It's not a mandatory. It's a, hey, this is a plan. We'd like you to follow it, but because we want the schools to be diverse, because it's supposed to be a place of learning, right? It's supposed to be a place of, development. You can't develop if you have a very homogeneous environment, right? Where everybody thinks the same. There's no development there. Everyone here has their own thoughts and has different cultural things that they bring to the table that none of us have thought about, right? Different experiences we've had, right? If we were all the same, right? If everybody was here was African American, right? I could pretty much relate to everybody, right? I could relate to all of them. Like, yeah, okay, I know what you grew up with. Okay, here, yeah, I've been there. I know what that happens there. And then, okay, I know what happens there. We're pretty comfortable with each other, right? In this class, I didn't grow up in any of the places you grew up. I grew up in New York, right? And so it's very curious to me as to how you grew up. What interesting things happened to you, right? How can I learn from you, right? Just how can we learn from each other, right? So affirmative action is there to help and to level the playing field. It's not there to bring it down. It's there to level it. And again, it's not mandatory. It is very much voluntary until you mess up. Once you mess up and you've been found that, hey, you were doing illegal admissions or stuff like that, then the government comes in and says, here's the affirmative action plan and you have to follow it. And then you have a quota system. So every semester, or every year that you have admissions, you're going to admit at least 10% of your incoming class of freshmen is going to be minorities. I don't care what it is. African American, women are considered minorities, so there you go, right? Asian American or Asian or, Hispanic, Latino, all right? 10% of that is gonna have, it's gonna be that demographic. And then the rest of it, we're not worried about it, okay? Because you need to give all these other people who are deserving an opportunity to come into the school and do well and accept them and not discriminate against them just because they're not a particular color, right? Just because they're not a particular religion, right? And you'll see, you kind of saw that with the Israel-Palestinian war, with some of the stuff where the Jewish people were having a problem with some of the Palestinians that were in these bigger institutions, right? Or Jewish people saying, hey, look, I'm part of the board, or I give a lot of money to Harvard. I need you to have this stance on the war, right? I need you to be on the side of Israel. Well, maybe Israel's not right, right? Maybe they're doing the wrong things, right? Just because, you give a lot of money, does that mean I have to adhere to your policy? But that's what tends to happen, right? If I'm giving you lots of money, guess what? I need to kind of lean this way, right? So same thing with the presidency, same thing with any really public or really big organization. They are very much a victim of donors, right? The more money you give, the more power you have, more leverage, right? If you give Donald Trump $10 million and he won the presidency, guess what? Tomorrow, or even today, hey, President Trump, remember that 10 million I gave you? So, what kind of job you gonna give me? I want to be the Secretary of Defense. I want to be an ambassador. Okay? I want to be, I don't know, I want to be the janitor. Okay? And he has to kind of like, okay, I'll find you something, right? Because he took the $10 million, right? There's things that come with that, right? So, affirmative action, important policy, but again, one, it doesn't lower the standards. Two, it's not mandatory unless you mess up, right? And then at that point, the government comes in and tells you what to do. All right? What time is it?
7:27.
7:27. Oh my goodness, I still got a few minutes. Woo!
You still got a whole hour if you want to.
Yeah, no, I do. I know, but I don't think anybody agrees with your plan.
I mean, you done whenever you done.
Exactly. All right. Okay, I'm gonna take away that F I gave you.
Thank you.
Let me see, we're trying to talk about that already. Oops. Okay, so real quick, let me go browse over these, all right? All right, Pregnancy Discrimination Act, all right, PDA. You can't discriminate against someone who's pregnant, okay? If someone becomes pregnant, in your office, in your job, you gotta let them be pregnant, okay? And then you usually give them the maternity leave that they deserve. You have to maintain their job. You can't fire them, all right? And also now we have paternity leave, okay? So mom gets 12 weeks, dad gets 8 weeks, okay? Because before we didn't have that, right? So, I mean, I've never been pregnant, so I don't know. Anybody here, the lady's been pregnant before, have kids? All right, so not all of us don't know, okay? But I have a mother, I have a sister, I have female friends, okay, who have kids, right? After you have a kid, from what I can tell, the last thing you want to do is do anything. You just want to sleep, right? But imagine you have no one there to help you. It's you gotta feed the baby, get up, and you got stitches, God forbid you had a C-section, they cut you up right down the middle, right? There go your ab muscles, right? All that work in the gym is gone, right? It's just not pretty, it's not good, right? So they decided, you know what? We need to give the fathers or the husbands time to support the moms. So you get 8 weeks now as a man to be an assistant to help your wife or the mother of your child and that kind of thing. Okay, so paternity. We have FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. And this is basically 12 weeks of, it's not vacation, it's 12 weeks to use if you have an event or crisis, right? If there's something that comes up where you need to take emergency leave, you have 12 weeks, right? Within that 12 weeks, you can do it unpaid or paid. It depends on how much vacation time you have, right? If you have vacation time, you can put it against that. But once your vacation time runs out, it becomes unpaid, right? The other thing is that as an employee of the company, I can donate my time to someone else. So let's just say you have, family medical issue and you use your 12 weeks and now you have to come back to work, but this problem still is going, all right? You can come to me or I can say, hey, look, I'll give you 2 of my weeks. Okay, appreciate it. You get 2 of the weeks and you can continue on FMLA for 2 weeks. I get 10 weeks now, you get the extra 2 weeks, right? So it's a pretty good program and the companies usually work with you to really make sure that, it's somewhat paid. But most times it's not paid because the company doesn't want to have to pay double because if it's paid, then that means they're paying you to be gone and they need to bring somebody else in to do the job or within the organization, we have to spread the work. All right, so we have to figure it out. But FMLA is a good program. Equal Pay Act, basically, we're looking at paying people regardless of gender. All right. For every dollar a man makes, how much does a woman make? Anybody know? No? Okay. So it used to be 50 cents. All right. Now it's 75 cents. And then they said in 2035, it'll be even. It'll be dollar for dollar. All right. Now you have somebody doing the same exact job, but the woman get paid less than the man. All right. So the Equal Pay Act was put in place to make sure that doesn't happen. It still happens because the powers that be still feel a certain way about things. There's other circumstances, right? And when you really balance it out, when you really look at the numbers, it's somewhat even, right? Because it depends on the industry you're in, right? If you think about the nursing field, right, that's majority women, right? If you think about certain industries where it's majority one gender or the other, it's really hard to balance out that pay, say dollar for dollar per se, that it's not getting, you guys aren't getting paid the same, right? Because there are a lot of different industries put in there and they're very skewed, right? Some industries are all male dominated, some are all female dominated. For the most part, most preschool teachers and elementary school teachers are women, right? Because guys, we're just not good teachers with kids, right? We don't do well with kids. We're just bad with kids, all right? Women just have a better touch with kids and it just works out. Nursing, not to say that there's a bunch of women doctors, but nursing is different where you kind of have to have a very good bedside manners, per se, okay? You have to understand and be compassionate, empathetic, and sympathetic. And sometimes men, we're not like that. We're not very kind, okay? Women have a more of a nurturing, maternal instinct, and they're kind of like, they're more open to taking care of people than men are sometimes like, you'll be all right, okay? There's some jello, you're fine, okay? Let's see here. Equity, kind of the same thing. Okay, I'll leave it there. Any questions? No? All right, we on week 2. I'm going to probably this week put the groups together. All right, so unless you send me an email and say, hey, I want to be in a group with such and such, right? I'm gonna put you in the groups myself. Okay, so it's gonna be arbitrary, but it'll be within the group that come to class that actually have to be on campus. All right. It'll probably be 3 to 4 people per group. More likely 4, because there's less papers I gotta read. They gotta look out for me too, reading a bunch of stuff, okay? All right. So I'll put the groups together probably this week, but if you have someone you want to be in a group with, or a particular group of people, send me an email, say, hey, we want to be in a group together, and then I'll put those 2 things together, okay? I don't really care. We just get the job done, all right? Aside from that, anything else? No questions? All right, go home, relax, have a good weekend. Don't forget, no Monday, no school. All right, and
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, so they, I'll probably,
Okay, Professor.
Yes, sir.